Well, welcome everybody to our second talk as part of the Art Discourse series during our third annual Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week. If you didn't know what Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week is, it is a self-guided discovery tour and celebration of the arts throughout Greater Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, and South Florida, where we work very diligently to highlight the cultural institutions, art centers, artists, and arts professionals working diligently throughout the year in the arts. And we give them a week where we encourage people to discover and engage in different art forms, virtually and in person through a new hybrid format of events. To find out more, you can log on to www.ftladw.com. And this speaker series and Art Week couldn't be made possible without the support of some gracious sponsors, including Los Olas Capital Arts and Los Olas Capital Advisors. So we thank them very much for their support. But without much further ado, we are here for our Art Discourse series where we bring brilliant minds to our community, give them front row access to leading arts professionals, curators, and artists and everybody else in between. And you're in for a treat today, as I'm sure you're aware, with Elle Schorr, who's an urban photographer, artist, and organizer of art salons at the Armory Art Center and curator. And without much further ado, it's Elle Schorr.
Thank you, Evan and Andrew Martineau, for inviting me to speak here today. I'm going to start with 6 questions that I just want everyone to think about while we're talking. I'm not going to give answers to these questions, but they're the questions that we ask ourselves all the time and that are a big part of what keeps each of us going, doing all the things we do and knowing that somehow the answers are extremely important. So my questions are, what does it mean to be an artist? Why do we make art? Why do we want to see it? Why do we show it? Why is it important to have art in our communities and give artists the opportunity to show what they are doing? And the big question of all, what is the value of art? So the organization that brought us these talks this week, the Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, is a perfect example of the kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about today. How local community-based nonprofit organizations can make all the difference for artists living in the community, whether they are emerging artists or full-time professionals. I'll be talking about my own growth as an artist and how I know from personal experience how important these organizations are. I'm also someone who goes to a lot of exhibitions throughout the Tri-County area, getting to know the artists, meeting the curators, and seeing the kinds of work being shown, and the many organizations here in South Florida who help us along the way. I'm also going to be talking about a personal project I've taken over the last 8 years, organizing a series of artist talks known as Art Salons at the Armory Art Center in West Palm Beach, and how that has led to me becoming an exhibition curator. Being a creative person can be a solitary occupation, we all know that. But for anyone who wants to have their work seen or heard or read or performed, it really does take a community of like-minded people. It also takes organizations large and small, nonprofit and private. They allow us to meet and network, share our work, and gain experience, confidence, and visibility. I'd like to start by telling you a bit about me. I grew up in suburban Far Rockaway in a 3-generation home in Queens. In New York, the last stop on the famous A train. It's along the beach, but still part of New York City. This is me as a teenager. I've been exploring art since the early 1960s, when I was a merchandising student at the Fashion Institute of Technology. I took a class there in art history. Our assignment each week was to go to the Metropolitan Museum to see in person the masterpieces we were talking about in class. At the end of the term, the class ended somewhere in the middle of Impressionism. I was just getting started, and I was determined to find out what came after that. So I've been learning about modern and contemporary art ever since. The Museum of Art has always been one of my favorite destinations. MoMA has always been at the forefront of showing photography as another means of making art, so I've been seeing and absorbing the many ways that an artist can use a camera over a lot of years. I've always been drawn to documentary and urban photography, and have been fascinated by the way it has changed over the years, from Walker Evans to Bernice Abbott to Dorothea Lange and Diane Arbus to Gary Winograd, Robert Frank, Lee Friedlander, and Cindy Sherman. I was also seeing work by Klaus Oldenburg, James Rosenquist, Andy Warhol, Robert Rauschenberg, and John Baldessari, and many others as the art world explored pop, assemblage, conceptual art, appropriation, postmodernism, and on and on. I've had a camera myself since about 1970, and I took a few classes in black and white photography and darkroom work. Then life took me in another direction, and I earned a bachelor's and master's degree in social work and embarked on a very different career. For many years, the pictures that I took were at family events and on vacations when I found the time to travel. I left social work in 2000, and my husband Jerry Kornbluth and I moved to Lake Worth, Florida, where I finally had time to get serious about photography and learn about digital technology, composition, concept, and meaning. My family and longtime friends were mostly in the New York area, so I went back often. Of course, museums and galleries were a part of every visit, though I was also discovering the richness of art and culture right here in South Florida. This is the first photograph I ever showed in public. I had taken it in Vermont in spring, and it was shown at the Palm Beach Photographic Center in their member exhibition. I was absolutely thrilled to have my work on a wall, and I became hooked. I think this really is something that is addictive in its own way. I started looking for other groups and places where I could show my photography and found that there were many opportunities, mostly local artist organizations who produce their own shows, also public and private nonprofit organizations like the Armory Art Center, the Lighthouse Art Center, and Palm Beach State College Easy Campus Art Gallery, where there are a mix of exhibitions, calls to artists, and student faculty shows. Being accepted felt really good to an emerging photographer looking for recognition and confirmation. Since then, I've been known for the photographs I take using reflections. They usually involve store windows, and this is the first one that I ever took. I took it while we were on vacation in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I was fascinated by one particular store. It was filled with lingerie and gag items, and what surprised me about it was that it was on the main street of the city around the corner from the castle. I stayed there for quite a while, exploring it with my camera. I think I composed this photograph intuitively, and I only realized what the reflection showed when I returned home and edited the photographs. I saw then that the chimney of a beautiful old building across the street had merged with the rhinestone and lace mannequin in the window. It combined long ago with here and now, and I had created something fun, unique, and exciting. Here is Reddenborough, as I called it when it was introduced through a photography exhibit at the Easy Campus Gallery. Many photographs in store windows followed, each a single exposure composed in the camera, as I began to look for interesting reflections more consciously. This was taken in Key West, and others were taken in many other South Florida locations. Store windows, I've realized, are arranged to entice us to come by and come in and make a purchase. But what I see when I look in these windows are all these distractions. I see light bouncing off the window from the sun and reflections from buildings and trees across the street. And whatever is happening behind me, the cars and people, buses and trucks, they all combine in the viewfinder and they begin to cancel each other out in all kinds of interesting ways. One summer day in 2008, I took my camera into Manhattan and headed to Soho. Although I had lived in and near the city all my life, I had never photographed it before. It was a very exciting experience. What you see in Lower Manhattan are all the ornate cast iron buildings, the fire escapes, the warehouses and lofts, the water towers, and all kinds of billboards and advertisements. I kept applying to different exhibits, and happily, I kept getting accepted. One of my photographs that day was Coca-Cola, which almost looks like a country store in a rural town, even with the cars on the street and the buildings behind it. One of the things that fascinates me about Soho is the contrast between old New York and the very contemporary New York of today. I love the energy of the city, the frenetic movement of people, traffic, blinking neon lights, store windows and billboards, all competing for our attention. I felt a bit more confident with each acceptance, and I entered Coca-Cola in the Boca Raton Museum's call to artists for their All Florida Biennial in 2009. To my great pleasure, my photograph was accepted. The juror had been the director of the prestigious Cranbrook Museum in Michigan and at the Corcoran in Washington, D.C. Felt really good to me. Adding even more affirmation, the work was mentioned in a review in the Palm Beach Post, having caught the eye and approval of the art critic Scott Eyman. I went back to Soho whenever I could. This is Ghosts of the Future. I call it that because of the soft focus on the mannequins that adds an eerie sense that the buildings are solid and real, but the people are from some time in the future. Feeling more confident now, I applied to a call to artists at the Armory, where the juror was Berenice Steinbaum, the legendary gallery owner from Miami and New York. Again, happily, I was among the chosen and showed Coca-Cola and 2 other photographs in visual conceits. It proved to be a beautiful and exciting show of contemporary art in the region, and I found myself beginning to think of myself as more than a photographer. Maybe I could even call myself an artist. I met other artists there who are friends to this day. And I was approached by Ellen Lyman, owner-director of the Lyman Gallery in Palm Beach. She liked Coca-Cola so much that she invited me to show it and another photograph in her gallery in Palm Beach. At that time, her gallery was in a beautiful historic building with a stucco patio filled with plants and charm. I say that because that gallery is no longer there. And over the past few years, I've seen one gallery close after another, leading me back to the necessity of nonprofit organizations in keeping art and culture alive. This is taken on a trip to Times Square. It was the first time that I photographed there, and I gradually got used to photographing in the middle of crowds, letting people move around me as I looked for photographic opportunities. It can take a long while to find a window worth exploring, and then to find the exact position where foreground and background come together to create something new and exciting. I call this Wonderland. It's really Johnny Depp on 42nd Street, in colors never seen before in that crowded Midtown tourist destination. Wonderland was included in another photography exhibit at the Easy Campus Gallery in Palm Beach State College. This is me on opening night talking about my work with students and posing with Carla Walt, the gallery manager, and her husband, Steve. The show led to another opportunity, being invited to participate in a two-person exhibition at Palm Beach Gardens City Hall with Nathan Selikoff from Orlando. He had also been in the photography exhibit at Easy Campus. Our work couldn't be more different. He uses algorithms to create complex images and imaginary societies in his computer, and mine, of course, are composed completely through a camera lens. Somehow these two bodies of work complemented each other, and we called our exhibition Visions, Real and Imagined. This is the lobby where the show was hung, and this is the opening. People just enjoying and trying to figure out what it was they were seeing in these photographs. One image I hung in that show was Looking Glass. It's an example of how shadow and light affect what we see when we look at reflective surfaces. As solid shapes block out the light coming into the space and fuse what's in front with what's behind to create something only seen in that moment, from that angle, through that lens. Creating these photographs has taught me to look at the world differently and to see things I'd normally miss. This is Mirage. It's also a reflection, but taken from inside a restaurant, looking out through the plate glass window. It shows a street scene, but also the lighting, the chandelier, and the plants on the inside. People ask me if it's a rainy day, or they assume that it's a rainy day, but it's not. The distortions come from the metallic surface on the ceiling, which is what I was focusing on. The waiters must have thought I was a bit strange. The combination of still and blurred moving images adds greatly to the painterly feeling. As you can see, color is especially important to me, and the bright yellow of New York taxis show up over and over again. Mirage was chosen to be included in another annual All Florida juried exhibition at the Boca Museum. This is Downtown Blues, taken in Soho at dusk. I find that that's a really magical time of day. The window design included a large golden reflective letter A, and it bounced the reflections into all kinds of odd angles and repetitions. One thing that people often ask me is how I keep myself out of a photograph. The answer is that sometimes it ruins the picture, and sometimes I can't keep myself out at all. In this particular photograph, it worked out fine, as I am one of the many out on the street and part of the crowd. Summer in City was taken on the hottest day, one of the hottest days of summer. I was in Chelsea waiting for a bus, and I looked up to find this swimmer dripping wet in an art gallery window on the second floor. I love the crazy unreality of it, the diagonals created by the rusted wall and the different levels of roof lines. These images were included in a solo exhibition at the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County, soon after they moved into their historic Art Deco home in Lake Worth. They've been mounting strong group and individual shows in Palm Beach County ever since, with Palm Beach County artists, providing a really fine opportunity for these artists to gain recognition and to network with others. In 2011, I took advantage of a program developed by the Broward County Cultural Division, the Artist as Entrepreneur Institute, also known as AEI. Like everyone who I think has ever taken this class, it is so highly recommended, and we all talk about it whenever we can. It's held every June at Art Serve for 4 very intense consecutive Saturdays, and it's the best $100 an artist can spend in this region. It's a program focused on the business end of being an artist, from legal and accounting issues to PR, marketing, and creating a business plan. People from across South Florida teach short modules on a huge number of related issues. Even better, 3 women who had previously taken the course created an annual exhibition known as DBA, Doing Business As. They invited graduates of the program to volunteer to be curators, different group each year, and they mentored them through the process. In the early years, it was held on the 6th floor of the Broward County Main Library. It's a beautiful and spacious location, and each of the 8 artists selected was given enough wall space so that what would have been a solo exhibition in another space became just one of the 8 here. I was thrilled to be included and met many artists from Broward County. They again expanded my friendships and broadened my sense of community. And these are 2 photographs from that installation. It was just a few months later that I had the idea to form a group of artists who were as eager as I was to talk about contemporary art. I knew the recently appointed director of education at the Armory Art Center and told her about my idea. She thought it would be a perfect fit, and art salons were born. These salons have continued for 8 years now and have evolved into artist talks with influential and highly respected artists from throughout South Florida. Each one consists of an artist sharing a PowerPoint presentation about their lives, their influences, and their work. And it's always followed by an informal group discussion between the artist and people in the audience. One art salon in the early years of doing this was particularly interesting. It was titled, "What is Your Dream Art Scene?" and it brought out many of the more influential people in the art community in Palm Beach County. The county is so large and the interests and aspirations of artists vary so widely that it soon became clear there are many varied and overlapping art scenes. People described particular spaces they were most excited by, meeting different needs but all complementing each other and adding to the opportunities to show and see art in this region. The transition to virtual art salons has worked surprisingly well. There's actually been a real benefit because people can join us from anywhere in the country, and people who are friends and family of the artists can also be there from wherever they are. Over the years, I've continued to photograph in South Florida as well as New York. Miami is an especially happy destination for me. It provides a wealth of opportunities. This is Transformation taken in the Wynwood district in Miami. For many years, Wynwood was known as a place where cheap clothing was made and sold in seedy stores. Now it's a super hip destination. It's an example of something I try to do in many of my photographs, to visually combine key aspects of a neighborhood in transition. The stripes are from an iconic Wynwood building on 27th Street. The mannequin in her cheap blue dress is in a window across the street in a building that has since been torn down. Transformation was included in another exhibition at the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County, this time a juried biennial. Another opportunity formed around this time, known as Art Synergy. It was started by a group of artists who contacted the owners of Art Palm Beach, David and Leanne Lester. They had the suggestion that artists from the area be given a free space in the convention center to show work alongside international artists and galleries. It would be a juried exhibition, and the artists would take turns working at the booth. Art Synergy quickly expanded to highlight multiple art districts within the county, and these events were publicized in all fair publicity. It was so successful that Art Synergy was also given a booth at Art Boca Raton. I showed facade there. I'm now printing my photographs 48 inches high on glossy metallic paper mounted to acrylic. I'm trying to capture the experience of actually looking in a glass window. This is me with two other artists who had work in that show, and with Rolando Barrero. He's a driving force responsible for making it happen. Facade was taken on 14th Street in Manhattan. It points out again the huge role that chance plays in my work, because I never know what I'll find when I go walking. This window was perfect for me, and I photographed it from every possible angle. Then later at home, I selected this photograph to print. I named it Facade because it showed the facade of the building across the street, but also the mannequin who is dressed for success and I'm not about to show any hint of personal vulnerability. Art Synergy puts out a call to artists every year for both fairs, and I had another Miami photograph accepted at Art Palm Beach in the Convention Center. Marigold was taken in the Design District, and like all my photographs, was completely composed in the camera, color, elephant, and all. When I find something, I take quite a few photographs, because while the window doesn't change, the people and traffic flowing by are in constant movement and are completely out of my control. After 2 years of organizing art salons, I began to realize I had the makings of a very fine group exhibition of artists from all over South Florida. I spoke to the administration and board at the Armory with a proposal to curate an exhibition, and I was given enthusiastic support. In the early years, these salons took place twice a month, so there were a lot of artists to include. Artists of Salon, a collective dialogue, opened in 2015 with 57 artists from throughout South Florida. It was spread over 2 locations, in the main campus of the Armory in West Palm Beach, and this is the opening reception, where I must say the reaction of the artists and everyone else there was huge confirmation that I was trying to do in creating a special space for artists was very meaningful to all who participated. These are some of the artists in the main location, and there was an artist reception and an artist talk at each location, one each Friday for 4 weeks. This is the Armory Annex, where the second part of that exhibition was shown. It's now known as the Hatch, and the city of Lake Worth continues to use it for exhibitions. These are several photographs from the exhibition before opening night and during it. Although most of my art viewing and showing has been in Palm Beach County, there are a few destinations to the south that are important enough to go to often and happily at times to be able to show in. One is Art and Culture Hollywood in Broward County. They've become known for the quality of their themed and solo exhibitions by leading artists from South Florida and nationally. They put out a call to South Florida artists for their biennial exhibition, and I was happy to be accepted into one. This is Spring Fling, taken on 58th Street in a Bergdorf window facing the south entrance to Central Park. Trees show up in many of my New York photographs, a reminder that nature can thrive even in the most urban environment. Another favorite destination is the Projects in Fort Lauderdale's Fat Village. It's a raw industrial warehouse, a nonprofit space owned by Doug McGraw and a partner. Doug is a developer who is also an art collector and is a passionate advocate for contemporary art. The space is only open one night a month for fourth Saturday art walks, and each show remains there for 2 or 3 months. The art walks draw a huge crowd with food trucks and a party atmosphere that brings thousands of people. many of whom would not usually be going to an art exhibit and certainly didn't come there for that reason. The projects is an 8,000 square foot space with 18-foot ceilings without heat or air conditioning. Despite that, some of the most creative artists in the region are happy to have the freedom to experiment on a scale that is not possible anywhere else in South Florida. After going to several of these art walks, I met the couple who manage and curate their shows, Leia Brown and Peter Simons. They're both exciting artists, and I've invited them to speak at Art Salon. They were 2 of the 57 artists who were part of my Artists of Art Salon exhibition. In the fall of 2016, Leia and I were talking at one of their art walks, and the subject of the future came up. I used the phrase opposing futures, and Leia immediately lit up and thought it could be the name for a fascinating exhibition. She invited me to co-curate the show with her and Peter. The show opened the next spring. This is the 3 of us during installation and opening night. Opposing Futures was an exciting opportunity for me to learn from experienced curators, and I was happy to introduce several Palm Beach artists to a venue they had not shown work in before. Shortly after that, I suggested to the Armory Art Center that we produce a second Artists of Art Salon exhibition with the artists who had spoken since the first one 2 years earlier. They responded very positively. I worked all through the next summer and fall, and the second biennial Artists of Art Salon exhibition opened in December 2017, this time in Montgomery Hall. By now, the salons were taking place once a month, so it was a smaller group. It's a 3,000 square foot space, and there were 21 artists, so each had a lot more space to install their work in. This is me and some of the artists who were in the show. I was then invited to show 5 of my photographs at the newly renovated Cornell Art Museum at Old School Square in Delray Beach. And the show was called Looking Glass. All of the artwork shared an interest in reflections, and the show featured artists from around the world. This is my installation, and me with one of the works. And these are 3 other works that I showed there. Regatta in NoHo, Back to Broadway, and Midtown Jam. About this time, an artist I knew had created an installation that powerfully addressed the Me Too movement and was looking for places to exhibit it. I got to thinking about how it would look at the projects, and then about what other works it might be shown with. It's now been a long time since I practiced social work, but the social justice, humanitarian values that drew me to that field continue. We're living, of course, in a highly politicized and polarized climate, and artists have responded with a huge outpouring of work that directly addresses many of the issues raised. I again spoke to Leia Brown at the projects and got the full support of Leia, Peter, and Doug to create an exhibition called Ripped from the Headlines. It opened in April 2019. The exhibition addressed climate change, war, migration, gun violence, the Black Lives Matter movement, and Me Too. This is me and the 2 men most involved in helping with the installation, Luke Jenkins and Jesse Edison, and me on opening night. When people walked into the projects, they were confronted with a huge simulated brick wall by Orlando Chiang, about 15 feet back from the entrance. On this wall, he had created hundreds of bricks, each with a tweet by Donald Trump. Orlando is an immigrant from Chile and for him, the issue of immigration was very personal. On the other side of the wall, the installation that inspired the whole show brought with it an outpouring of personal connection. Mary Catello had created 6 full-sized female sculptures, each accompanied by a different story of sexual abuse. It's called Stand Up, Speak Out, and people were invited to write a personal note on a Post-it and tape it to the wall behind. People stopped at this exhibit and spent a lot of time looking, reading, and thinking, talking to Mary Catello. She was standing there all the time and writing their own Post-it notes. This is Aurora Molina, who came to the United States as a child. She's a fiber artist who creates portrayals of people of all ages and from many cultures. She had created a group of child-sized figures in orange jumpsuits behind a chain link wall, the children we were seeing on the news every night. I was very proud to have this in the show. Behind them were embroidered banners with some of the cries we were hearing on the news every night. Luann Kolodny installed a large grouping of drawings, images of war and conflict, taken from news reports all across the world. T.D. Gillespie created a commentary on the way children are introduced to guns and war games. This is a giant mobile that she created with embroidered guns on onesies. Rolando Barrero created an installation of various sized body bags, which he called school supplies for a new generation. Mark Cohen says he is painting injustice. He combines images taken from the news, which he paints on large expanses of raw canvas. In this exhibit, he showed 4 of them, and they functioned as the front page photographs in a newspaper. One depicted the shooting in Las Vegas, and another the white supremacist demonstration in Charlottesville at the moment of impact by a car into a crowd of protesters. 2 others were on the other side of the space. They were paintings of police officers convicted of murder in the shootings of innocent Black men. As I was putting the show together, I learned about Manuel Oliver. He's the father of a student at Parkland High School who lost his life in the tragedy of the Parkland shootings. Manny is an artist and has now dedicated his life to a campaign to end gun violence. He is painting powerful murals all over the United States to spread his message. When we met, he told me that he came to the art walks often and that he and his son Joaquin had been to an art walk at the projects a few months before the shooting. He had created a video of him and his wife at an anti-gun demonstration and installed it for the preview. On opening night, he painted his mural in front of a huge crowd, many of whom lived in Parkland and were student and teacher survivors and family members of the shooting. His wife was at his side, as she is for every mural he paints. We send out publicity releases for the exhibition, of course, but this was a show that brought out an unusually strong response. We had news teams and journalists from many South Florida TV stations and newspapers. Rosa Garmendia showed 25 of a growing collection she has created to memorialize innocent Black people killed by police. Randy Berman created an installation that depicted a mass rally under a banner stating that lies are truth. Pip and Dwayne Brent had a rug embroidered with a map of the Middle East, complete with bomb explosions and small piles of weapons. And this is one of Mark Cohen's paintings of police in prison for murder. Judy Polster showed a variety of her hand-embroidered and politically charged commentaries on the world we live in. There were 5 different artists who took on issues related to the destruction of our environment. Xavier Cortada brought his underwater HOA project to Broward County. Sibel Kokobasi painted melting icebergs on gold foil emergency blankets. Isabel Govea filled a huge fishing net with plastic waste products. Gina Cunningham made a film about fire and another about the Me Too movement. And Jean Jaffe created Aftermath, depicting a home and figure after a forest fire. People came through quietly, looking and reading the labels and talking to each other about what they were seeing. I was really concerned that there might be some objections to some of the more political statements, but over the full 3 months, there was only this sense of quiet contemplation. During the installation, Doug McGraw introduced me to Sally Ann O'Dowd, a journalist who had taken a special interest in the issue of free speech. She suggested a panel discussion on free speech to coincide with the exhibit, and I totally agreed. It was a perfect match. It resulted in a packed audience, an impressive list of speakers, and a chance for another group of people to see the exhibit as well. Darius V. Dowtree recited several poems from his latest book, And the Walls Came Tumbling. You can watch the entire Free Speech Forum on my website under the Curation tab on the Ripped from the Headline page, along with many photographs of the work and the installations. In December 2009, the 3rd biennial Artists of Exhibition opened at the Armory. Once again, artists created very personal installations that reflected the body of their work. There was an opening reception and artist talks at the closing reception. And this is most of the artists who were in the exhibition. During this time, I continued to photograph when I could, mostly during my spring and fall visits to New York. These are 3 of my more recent photographs, all of which convey aspects of today's contemporary urban woman. She's often a career woman, confident and forward-thinking, whether she's at work or at play. This one is leading the way. I've come to see these windows as designed to appeal to our wishes to be young, hip, cool, fun, earthy, or elegant. We see ourselves in the mannequins, and if the store windows are successful, we come in, try the clothes on, and make a purchase. I call this one Head Full of Dreams. This is No Stopping Now. I see these mannequins as representation of the changing position that women have in the world around us. And it seems to me that I've come full circle in a very unexpected way. I started as a fashion merchandising student in New York, and today I walk the streets of New York looking in fashion store windows, finding images not planned by the store owners, and maybe not seen by anyone other than me. Creating these photographs has given me another purpose, but it's still fun to look at the clothes as well. I'm going to continue to photograph and see as many art exhibits as possible as soon as this coronavirus pandemic is behind us. And I'm going to meet the artists involved, and once a month, as I am now virtually, bring some of the best of them to Art Salon to talk about their work. There's a schedule of upcoming talks on my website, elleschorrphotography.com. And thanks to my husband Jerry's contribution, past talks are all recorded and archived as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your efforts. I'm glad that everybody now has a greater appreciation for not only your journey as a creative and professional, but your contributions. I think a lot of people might remember Rip from the headlines, most notably. And I hopefully we'll have some interesting questions. We do have one question that came through from Dana Kleinman. It came through on the Facebook page, but Dana asks, for your photography, is it 100% in camera, or do you do editing, darkroom, or Photoshop work afterwards?
That is the best possible question and the one I get asked over and over again. And hi, Dana. I meet Dana in so many exhibitions. The answer is that all of the photographs are composed in the camera, and I never add anything to the image. However, I do a lot of work in Photoshop, and Photoshop has become our darkroom. It's where we intensify colors. It's where we, to some degree, manipulate what we want the spotlight to be on, what we want to come out and be highlighted, and what we want to be a little bit less intrusive. And sometimes, if it's really necessary, not very often, but once in a while, I use the clone tool and other tools and delete something that is really distracting, if it's something small and insignificant that I'm able to delete. So so it's a yes and a no. Everything is composed in the camera.
Awesome. And if anybody else has additional questions, you can feel free to chime in on the chat box here. In the meantime, next question is, what are your thoughts on the ever-changing Palm Beach County art scene with the investment and the moves coming from New York and beyond? What are you looking forward to with Palm Beach County art scene as we move forward to 2021?
It's an interesting question. It's impossible to know the answer to that. As I said earlier, the emphasis in the arts in all of the counties, maybe not Miami. Miami is a whole other world because there are so many thriving and very beautiful private art galleries there. But in the other counties, in Broward and in Palm Beach County, they keep going out of business. I've shown work at several galleries. I've got friends who've shown at galleries. The artists who speak at Art Salon are often very, very recognized and influential, but they're not finding gallery representation most of the time. So we look to the nonprofit organizations. I'm also seeing an increasing number of artist studios, artist-run spaces that are opening up throughout all of the counties. And I hope that that will continue to happen. There's a huge need for it. There are also all kinds of smaller regional groups and groups that are formed around particular disciplines. There's a photo salon at the Armory, there's a ceramic league, there's a watercolor society. So there are many, many different ways that artists are finding a sense of community and encouraging each other and networking. And so that's what I hope will continue.
Amen. We're hopeful that art will help continue aiding in our road back to the new normal. And thankfully, we're able to do events like this virtually with our new hybrid in-person and virtual Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week. We do appreciate you guys tuning in during the Art Discourse series. You can catch the replay of this talk on our Facebook page, and we'll edit it up a little bit, post it on our YouTube later this week, so you can share with your friends that might have wanted to tune in but not able to make it this afternoon. If you'd like to find the rest of our Art Discourse series of speakers, which runs daily until January the 24th, you can log on to www.ftladw.com. We actually have an upcoming speaker in the chat, Miss Lori Pratico, actually too, and Suzanne Barton. And we're glad to continue giving our community front row access to brilliant minds through this art discourse series, as you just witnessed with Elle Schorr. We do have a few in-person events remaining during the week with an open studio tour of one of our Zero Empty Spaces affordable artist studio locations in Gulf Ocean Mile this Wednesday, the 20th from 5 to 9 p.m. And next Saturday, the 23rd, at our Gulfstream Park location in Hollandale, where we actually have 18 artist studios, which will go from 12 to 8. And you could discover artists working in their space affordably. And we're glad to continue expanding that program with new locations actually coming to Palm Beach County and Boynton Beach soon. If you have any questions for us, you can reach out to ftladw.com. Ellie, if they want to find you on social media or send you an email, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My email is Elle Schorr at elleschorrphotography.com. And look at my website, elleschorrphotography.com, and also Facebook. I use a lot. And Instagram I use not as often. Facebook is part of my daily routine. So thank you, Evan, and hi to everyone.
Beju, a friend of the program, Beju says hello. And we got a good amount of participation and engagement. We definitely appreciate you guys taking the time out on a Sunday afternoon to join us for this talk. We hope you could join us the rest of the week for our self-guided Discovery Tour of the Arts. And once again, these talks as part of our Art Discourse series and the Art Week is made possible with support from Las Vegas Capital Arts and Las Vegas Capital Advisors and the Broward County Cultural Division. We definitely appreciate everybody's support and tuning in, and we'll see you in the next time. Cheers.